This is problem number 3 from section 3.2. In this problem they say solve the equation by completing the square. Alright, we can solve, you can see we have a quadratic, we can solve any quadratic with these 4 steps, but they're telling us specifically they want us to use completing the square for this problem. Okay. They have the problem set up actually pretty nice for completing the square. Let's go ahead and bring out our little piece of information that tells us how to complete the square. So to complete the square, take negative b over 2a, square it, and add that number to both sides. So I kind of like that they have the c on the right side, so let's leave the c on the right side for right now. That kind of makes it easier just to work with these two terms on the left side. And we don't need it, obviously, for the negative b over 2a part. So we'll start with negative b over 2a. So negative b over 2a squared is going to equal negative 6 over 2 times 1 squared. This is going to give you 6 over 2 squared, which is 3 squared, which is 9. Perfect. So we got 9 for an answer for negative b over 2a squared, and we want to add that number to both sides. So we have x squared minus 6x plus 9 equals 10 plus 9. So we didn't change the equation at all because we added 9 to each side. Right? So when you add 9 to each side, you could easily just subtract that 9 away and you'd have the exact same equation. So it's not, the equation's not changed at all. But the whole point is we're trying to complete the square. We're trying to get this to be a perfect square. And the reason we want it to be a perfect square is if this becomes a perfect square, we're going to be able to use the square root method that we have right here. You'll see how that works in a second. What are the factors of 9? Well, we know the factors of 9 are 3 and 3 because that's how we got it, right? We did 3 squared. So the factors of 9 are 3 and 3, but the middle needs to be negative. So I'm going to have to use negative 3 and negative 3. So this is x minus 3, x minus 3 equals 19. This factors to x minus 3, x minus 3. We can check that by saying x times x is x squared, x times negative 3, negative 3x, negative 3 times x, negative 3x, that's negative 6x, and negative 3 times negative 3 is 9. So we know that this factors to negative 3, x minus 3, x minus 3. But that's the same factor times itself, meaning we can write that as x minus 3 squared equals 19. And now we have completed the square. So that's the actual completing the square part, right? We do negative b over 2a squared, we figure out our factor, we add it to both sides, then we factor the perfect square, and once we're there, we're actually going to do the square root method, right? We don't have any other terms here except for this one with x in it, and we have a square here, so we're going to square root each side. So I'm going to square root the left side and the right side. When you square root the left side, you're left with x minus 3 equals the root of 19 on this side. Now, when you square root, okay, it's always going to end up with, especially when you do a square root, when you square root a square, you're always going to end up with plus and minus this number on the right side. Because there's always you can either, remember with squaring, you can either square a positive number or square a negative number and get the same answer. So it's always plus and minus root 19 here. Then we add the 3 over, so add 3 to this side, and we end up with x equals 3 plus and minus root 19. Now I usually like to make you write this out, so you can say x equals 3 plus root 19, or x equals 3 minus root 19. Just so that you know that those two answers are completely separate. And that's how you solve using completing the square.